Welcome to this presentation. My name is Luis Silva. I am an American government teacher, and today we're looking at the N-400 application. This is the application that you must fill out and submit in order to become a United States citizen, or the application for naturalization. We are going to be reviewing step by step how you can fill out this application by yourself and submit it also to USCIS or immigration. Before we move on to the application, I want you to be aware that you will be needing some documents, and I'm going to show you which documents you are going to need in order to complete this application. Once we're done with that, we are going to be going and reviewing the application itself. Step by step, you will learn how to complete the application by yourself and submit it to immigration. Do not forget to subscribe to this channel. Do not forget to share this video. Do not forget to like this video in order for us to help all people who want to become United States citizens and learn how to fill out the N-400 application. Let's move on and review the documents. First of all, this is the first page, the N-400 application. Please make sure that when you're filling this application out, you use the correct version of the application. If you look to the right-hand side, the top right-hand side of the application, you see that this particular application for naturalization, Form N-400, expires on 09/30/2022. So this is the form that you must use in order to apply to become a United States citizen. Make sure to answer all questions. If an item is not applicable to you, make sure to type NA, just like you see here, which basically means not applicable. You must complete sections 1 through 15 of this application. Do not complete parts 16, 17, or 18 until the immigration officer tells you to do so during the interview. The first thing you will need is your green card. Very important. You are going to need the green card number because that number will go on every page of the N-400 application. You are also going to need the date you became a permanent resident. The second document that you are going to need is your Social Security card. The application does ask you for your Social Security number, so make sure you have it with you. The third document that you will need is parent documents. You need to be able to tell immigration the date of birth of your parents, the country of origin of your parents, the date your parents became United States citizens, and the A number, if any. So make sure you have that ready. You are also going to need your employment history or your schooling history for the past 5 years. You need to have the names of your employers. If you only had one employer in the past 5 years, you only need the name of that employer. If you've been at school during the past 5 years, you need obviously the name of the school, and you also need, for both either employment or schooling, you need locations, the address, and you need specific dates. Again, if you've been with your employer for the past 5, 6, 7 years, you only need his or her name or the name of the business and the date you started, and obviously until present. So make sure you have all of the documents with you. You're also going to need your marital status. This obviously applies to those people that are married. If you're not married, you don't need this, but you are going to need obviously the name of your current spouse. You're going to need when you got married, and if you have any previous marriages, you're going to need that information. If you were previously divorced, you need to have obviously the name of your spouse or your ex-spouse. You need the dates when you got married, and you also need the dates when you got divorced. And you're also going to need the documents. In this case, you can get those documents, your divorce documents, at your local courthouse. You're also going to need your children information. This means legal names, date of birth, the address where they live, and the DA number, if any. So make sure you gather all of the information because you need to put it in your application. When filing your application, please make sure to print clearly using black ink. In case you run into a scenario that you need extra space to answer questions, make sure you attach additional sheets of paper. You must include on the top of each additional sheet of paper the following information. 1. Your name. 2. Your A number, alien registration number or green card number. 3. You need the date. 4. You need application page number, the part number, as well as the item number, in order for the immigration officer to know which part of the application you're adding additional information to. And also do not forget your signatures, extremely important. These are the documents that you need in order to complete your N-400 application for naturalization. Let's move on to the application. Now that you have gathered all of the necessary documents, it is time to move on and complete Form N-400, the application to become a United States citizen. Before we continue, I want you to look to the right-hand side of the application, top right-hand side, and please make sure that you are using the correct version of the application. In this case, this application expires on 09/30/2022. So this is the version that you need to be using now. Let's move on where it says start here. Make sure that you are using black ink in order to complete this application. If an item is not applicable to you, make sure that you type NA, which means not applicable. Also remember, you must complete parts 1 through 15 only. The other parts you are completing in front of the immigration officer. And if your biological or legal adoptive mother or father is a United States citizen by birth or was naturalized before you reached your 18th birthday, you may be already a United States citizen. Please keep that in mind. Let's move on to part 1. This is about your eligibility. Information about if you are eligible to become a United States citizen. Also, if you look to the top right-hand side of the application, you must enter your 9-digit A number. Very important. You must make sure that you are entering that number in every page. First of all, if you are at least 18 years of age and have been a lawful permanent resident of the United States for at least 5 years, you qualify to become a United States citizen. Second, if you have been a lawful permanent resident of the United States for at least 3 years, in addition, you have been married and living with the same U.S. citizen spouse for at least 3 years, and your spouse has been a U.S. citizen for the last 3 years at the time you file your Form N-400, then you qualify to become a United States citizen. Also, you can read item C, item D, and item E of part 1 of this application to see other options to become a United States citizen. Let's move on and complete part 2. Part 2 is information about you, the person who is applying to become a United States citizen. And obviously, immigration needs to know who you are. And in this case, you need to provide your family name, last name, your given name, your first name. And if you have a middle name, you also need to provide that middle name. If you look at item number 2, it's asking you for your name exactly as it appears on your resident or your green card in this case. Make sure you fill out that information, last name, first name, and if you have a middle name, make sure that you type your middle name or write your middle name. And continuing on with part 2, item number 3, other names. In case you have used other names, this includes like nicknames, make sure that you type that name here. Once again, last name, first name, and the middle name if applicable. If you look at item number 4, this is optional, by the way, if you want to change your name. Very important. Some people want to change their first name, their middle name. So if you want to do that, this is the place to do it. And if you do, make sure you select the yes portion here next to item number 4, and underneath that, make sure you type in the name that you want to use. If you do not want to use any other names, just make sure you select no and then move on. Item number 5 of part 2 is asking you for your social security number. Make sure that you type or print in black your social security number and make sure it is accurate. And item number 6 is your USCIS online account number. You don't need to worry about this unless you actually have an account number online with immigration. You can type it in here or write it in here, or else you just move on. And number 7, gender. Number 8, date of birth. Item number 9, date you became a lawful permanent resident. Item number 10, country of birth. Item number 11, country of citizenship or nationality. Item number 12 is asking if you have a physical or developmental disability or mental impairment. That prevents you from demonstrating your knowledge and understanding of the English language and or civics requirement for naturalization. If you do, please make sure that you select the yes part here next to item number 12. And if you answer yes, you must also submit a completed form N-648, which is medical certification for disability exceptions. Make sure that you submit that form with this application. Item number 13 is basically exemptions from the English language. And let's just review because this is very important. If you are 50 years of age or older and have lived in the United States as a lawful permanent resident for a period totaling at least 20 years at the time you file your form N-400, you must answer yes here. Now let's go to section B here, and it says, are you 55 years or old and have lived in the United States as a lawful permanent resident for periods totaling at least 15 years at the time you file for your form N-400? If you have, please make sure that you select yes. If you haven't, make sure you select no. And part C of item number 13 here, are you 65 years of age or older and have lived in the United States as a lawful permanent resident for periods totaling at least 20 years at the time you file your form N-400? If you meet this requirement, you will also be given a simplified version of the civics test. This is a test that only has 20 questions and you will be asked 10 of those questions. Now let's look at accommodations for individuals with disabilities and or impairments. This is part 3. If you have a disability or an impairment, you must answer yes to this question. And if you answer yes to this question, you must tell the immigration officer how he can accommodate you. For example, if you need American Sign Language, immigration can provide that for you. If you have a blindness or you have trouble seeing, you need to tell the immigration officer how he can accommodate you here. And now continuing on with part 3, accommodations for individuals with disabilities or impairments. If you have any other type of disability or impairment, for example, you use a wheelchair, you must let the immigration officer know and you must type it here. Now let's move on to part number 4, information to contact you. Very important. You need to provide a daytime telephone number, an evening telephone number. You also need to provide a work telephone number, if any, and a mobile telephone number, if any. If you only have a mobile telephone number as a daytime telephone number, evening telephone number, just type it in. Just type in your mobile phone number. I would strongly suggest that you also provide your email address, as the immigration officer may want to contact you also via email. So make sure you provide all of that information. Now let's move on to part 5, information about your residence. Immigration wants to know where you have lived during the past 5 years. So under item 1, part A, you see that they want your current physical address and make sure you provide it. Part 5, item number 1, in this case letter B, you see that they want also your current mailing address if it is different from the previous address you have entered. Please remember to gather all of the places that you have lived. If you have moved within the past 5 years, you need to provide all of the places that you have lived, as immigration wants to know where you have lived during the past 5 years. And you can see here you have extra space to complete any other information about your residence. Now let's move on to, in this case, part 6. This is information about your parents. Please remember, if neither one of your parents is a United States citizen, then you can skip this part and go all the way to part 7. Part 6, item 1, is asking you, were your parents married before your 18th birthday? You must answer yes or no. You must provide the information about your mother. In this case, is your mother a U.S. citizen? You must tell immigration yes or no. If your mother is a U.S. citizen, you must complete the following information. If your mother is not a U.S. citizen, then you can skip to the information about your father. But this is what they need, or immigration needs, from your mother in this case, or your father. Last name, first name, middle name, mother's country of birth, mother's date of birth, date mother became a United States citizen, and the aid number, if any. If your mother is not a United States citizen, but your father is, then you must move and complete item number 3 here, which is information about your father. In this case, the same thing. You need to say, if your father is a U.S. citizen, then you must say it. If it's not, then you just say no. And if your father is not a U.S. citizen, then just go ahead and move on to part 7. But you also need from your father family name, last name, given name, first name, and that middle initial if applicable, father's country of birth, father's date of birth, the date your father became a U.S. citizen, if known obviously, and the A number if applicable. Now let's move on to part number 7. Part number 7 is biographic information. This is very important, as USCIS requires you to complete the categories that you have below here, part 7, to conduct background checks. This is very important, so make sure that you provide this information. The first thing you're asked is your ethnicity. The second thing they ask is your race. The third thing they ask is your height. The fifth thing they ask is your eye color. The sixth thing they ask is your hair color. This is the information that they need for part number 7. Fairly simple. Make sure that you answer correctly. You can also check, for example, your ID, your state ID, in order to find, for example, your height if you're not sure. Let's move on to part number 8. This is information about your employment and school you attended. Also, if you look to the right hand side of part number 8, you also see that you must have your A number, so make sure that you enter it there. This part is very important because immigration also wants to know if you have worked and where you have worked during the past 5 years. If you have done a combination of school and work during the past 5 years, you need to tell immigration about it. You must have the name of the employer. Make sure that you have specific dates when you worked, and make sure that you fill this part as accurate as possible. If you have been at school during the past 5 years, well, just write the name of the school and obviously the address, its location, and the dates, when you have studied from. And the same thing with your employer. If you have been employed by the same company or the same person for the last 5 years, all you need to do is just type or write the name of the employer and his address, and also like the dates. So make sure that you follow through on this. Make sure that you list your occupation. Make sure that you provide as much information as possible. And this way, immigration will know what you have been doing in terms of work or schooling during the past 5 years. So gather all that information and make sure you complete 5 full years of information, either schooling, employment, or a combination of both. Part number 9 has to do with time outside the United States. And obviously you need to type or write your A number, your green card number, to the right hand side. And part number 9, item number 1, is asking you how many total days, 24 hours or longer, did you spend outside the United States during the last 5 years? If you spent 10 days, make sure you write 10 days. Part number 9, item number 2, is saying basically how many trips of 24 hours or longer have you taken outside the United States during the last 5 years? Fairly simple. Just be honest, and if you've taken 5, write 5. If you've taken 10, make sure you write 10. And in this case, if you look at part 9, item 3 is asking you to list all the trips of 24 hours or longer that you have taken outside the United States during the last 5 years. Start with the most recent trip and work backwards. If you need extra space, you use additional sheets of paper. Now, part number 10 has to do with information about your marital status. Very important. If you obviously are single, well, all you have to do here is on item number 1, part 10, all you have to do is select single, never married. But if you are married, you need to tell immigration here the name of your spouse. Please make sure that you have all of the information, such as your current spouse legal name. This includes first and middle name if possible, and last name. If your spouse used to use a different name, make sure you type it or write it here because immigration wants to know. And any other names used by your current spouse. This includes any nicknames. Also, your current spouse date of birth. You need to make sure you let immigration know that information, and the date you enter into marriage with your current spouse. If you have previously been married and you are currently divorced, obviously because you're married with your current spouse, you need to provide the information about your ex-spouse. And this means, of course, his or her name. This means the dates that you were married, the date that you divorced. You have to provide all of that information. And if your spouse was previously married before he or she married you, you must also provide the information about him and his ex-spouse. Make sure that you get all court documents pertaining to your divorce in order to provide it to immigration. So this is part 10, all about your marital history. If you have never been married, you do not need to complete this part. Part 11 has to do with your children. In this case, you must indicate your total number of children. This includes all children, including children who are alive, missing, or deceased, children born in the United States or in other countries, children under 18 years of age or older, children who are currently married or unmarried, children living with you or elsewhere, current stepchildren, legally adopted children, and the children born when you were not married. So you need to have all of that information, and you must provide it to immigration. You need to provide names, A numbers, if possible. You need to provide date of birth, country of origin. So it's a lot you need to fill out if you have more than one child. This is part 12, additional information about you, the person applying to be a United States citizen. Answers in items 1 through 21. If you answer yes to any of these questions, you must include a typed or printed explanation on an additional sheet of paper as to why you answer yes. For example, part 12, item 1 is asking you if you have ever claimed to be a United States citizen in writing or in any other way. Please make sure that you carefully answer all of these questions. You have to answer a total of 50 questions, so go slowly. Make sure that you analyze the questions. If you're unsure about a question, think about it really careful, as your response can potentially get on the way of becoming a United States citizen. So it's a long part here, and obviously you have to provide accurate responses to USCIS. Part number 13 has to do with applicant statement, certification, and signature. If you have filled this application out completely by yourself, you need to tell immigration. If you have used somebody else, an interpreter, to actually complete this application for you, you must also tell immigration. Fairly simple, just be honest and straightforward. You are required to sign this application. You are required to sign Part 13, which is your statement, your certification, and your signature to confirm what you have said. If you have used an interpreter, you must provide the interpreters, and this is for Part 14, contact information and the address, phone number to immigration. Make sure that you are on top of this. In addition, the interpreter has to sign it and date the application. Part number 15 is contact information, declaration, and signatures of the person preparing this application, if other than the applicant. So make sure that you provide the preparer's full name and the mailing address as well. We have completed sections 1 through 15 of this application, and as you can see here in front of you, we have a note. Do not complete parts 16, 17, or 18 until the USCIS officer instructs you to do so during the interview. So make sure that you are aware of this. Do not complete these portions of the application. Make sure that you review this application before you submit it. Go back to it and make sure that if you need to make any corrections, you do so in order to get your application to be approved by immigration.